Hi, we're down at Trevor James this afternoon. We're answering some questions here that have been posted up on the YouTube site, on the Saxophone Teacher site. And we're going to talk a little bit in this video about scales and patterns to do more with improvisation. Before we do that, those of you that are a little bit eagle-eyed will notice that I've got a new saxophone strapped around my neck here. The very, very famous English saxophonist, Mr. Andy Shepherd, has had this particular model of saxophone designed especially for him, and it's an autograph series saxophone, which is quite fantastic. So you can check that out on the net and find out all the information about it. But at the present time, this is my saxophone of choice, and it's a really cool horn. So we're going to talk about scales and how we can get involved with some patterns. The whole issue of patterns and how you apply them into your improvisation is obviously quite a tricky subject. There are countless different books available on patterns. The most obvious one will be something like Patterns for Jazz by Jerry Coker. Abersold does various different pattern books as well. There are hundreds of them, literally hundreds of them out there. The one thing that I think that you should be aware of is that these books are going to give you the vocabulary of jazz. They're going to allow you to take a normal scale, something like this, and just turn it into something like this. And that way then you can hear that I haven't done anything different. I've not used any different notes. I've just played them in a slightly different way, and I've added rhythm into the proceedings, and that's really what the patterns are going to do. The patterns can range from very, very simplistic ones like that into something which can be quite complex. The main thing that I think that you need to be aware of here is how you then actually apply these patterns into your improvisation. It's going to be in your initial attempt at improvising, probably the most easy thing for you to do is to try and play some of these patterns during the improvisation. But very soon you're going to realise the fact that if you can play those patterns, then everybody else can play those patterns. So all of the top improvisers, all of the really famous guys have been the guys that have taken the time to learn their scales absolutely inside and out, and to use some patterns, but to really form their own, to really make their own, and to bring their own, as Lester Young said, voice to the party, their own ideas to the table. You don't particularly want to be playing all the time ideas that everybody else can play. They're a great way to get you started, but you don't want to be reliant upon them all the way through. There's a really fantastic book by Bob Mintzer, if you go out there and get that, where he's interviewed by a guy called Miles Osland. I think you can buy the whole book. You then have the transcribed solos. There's about 10 or 12 transcribed solos in there from various different albums that Mintzer's recorded. And then Miles Osland interviews him about a different aspect of his playing to do with each of the different solos. One of the things that he talks about in there is patterns, and Miles Osland makes the point to him that in the countless hours that it took him to transcribe all of these solos, that he found, I think, 1-2 examples of pattern playing in Mintzer's playing. The rest of it is literally coming out the top of his head. Mintzer makes the point there, and it's very, very similar to my train of thought, that patterns are a great way for you to learn, but you have to be very, very careful in actually then how you apply them, because if you're just going to play patterns, then you're going to sound like everybody else, and that's not the object of the exercise. You want a little bit more of you coming through in your improvisation. So I would say to you that if you can learn your scales, and it really depends upon which scale that you're actually learning at that particular time. If you start with your majors, work your way through the minors, go into some of the more interesting things, the diminished, the half diminished, the blues scales, the Lydians, the Mixolydians, this kind of thing. and really then start to, once you've done your hard work about the technique of the saxophone, start to have a little bit of fun applying a little bit of rhythm to them. So almost using the notes of each particular scale like a note bank. So again, if we took that G major scale there, and I can really just use any of the notes however I want, and I'm going to apply a rhythm that I want to it. So I've done nothing there except add rhythm into the 7 notes which make up the G major scale. Certain scales will lend themselves to being even more jazzy. If you took something like the jazz blues scale, even just the basic playing of the scale has a certain bluesy, jazzy type of feel to it. If you start adding rhythm into it, suddenly there you've got something which sounds exactly like you're after. Very, very jazzy, very, very bluesy. It sounds cool, but we're not really doing much there. We're just taking a known scale and we're adding a little bit of rhythm into it. Now, for you to get these rhythms, you then need to start thinking about the amount of tunes that you know and the amount of things that you actually go and listen to, the amount of people that you listen to. And this is where it's important that you've constantly got your ears full of the great players, so that whenever you've got your iPod on, you've got some whatever, you've got some Dexter Gordon on there, you've got some Sonny Rollins on there, you've got some Parker, you've got some Coltrane, you've got some Mintzer, some Mike Brecker. Any of these guys, okay, are going to give you ideas as to what to do with your scales. You're going to listen to their phrases and realise that all they were doing was applying exactly these principles. They were just doing it very, very well. So that is the rub here. Okay, it's about you just continually playing around with these things to get things which you're going to think are going to sound cool. And of course, never forgetting that you need to then be able to transpose this into the 12 keys. It's no good being able to just play in G, you need to be able to play in every key available. If you look at a previous video that I've done on this site, I think it's called Scales and Their Importance, I wax lyrical about the need for you to understand what your major scales are and understand what your cycle of fourths and fifths is and how you would actually go about practicing scales. So check that one out as well. But in the meantime, you can do this at any stage of your playing career. You can get involved with it, but just be careful with patterns, because although they can be great for you and they can give you all the vocabulary you want, you don't want to be saying the same things as everybody else.